The second exercise I chose for the core isolation is the basic crunch. Now the crunch is trying to isolate the abdominals, and then the assistance comes from the obliques, and the big player in the abdominal crunch is going to be the transverse abdominis. That is the core set muscles, the fibers run front to back. So in order to engage that, we can't engage that with any type of resistance because you can't work that muscle using gravity. What it does is it brings the abdominal wall in. Okay, so if we bring it in and hold it, that's the contraction that we want prior to actually doing the movement. So we're going to engage the transverse abdominis. We might even palpate that, as well as palpating the abdominals that run top to bottom here. Okay, so the abdominal crunch, I'm going to demonstrate that, and then we'll bring our client in. So for the abdominal crunch, the preparatory phase, and then the is when we're pre-engaging the transverse abdominis and the abdominal muscles. The concentric phase is when things are getting shorter. All right, so if I have my arms crossed, it's this phase. The isometric phase in the middle is when we're holding it, and then the eccentric phase, the terminal phase, is when we're bringing it back down. So we breathe out on the way up, and we breathe in on the way back down. So I have a bench set up here with a couple of yoga mats where I'll be demonstrating the basic abdominal crunch. For the basic one, I'm just going to have my arms crossed over, but if we want to increase the resistance over time, we can bring the hands behind the head or even extend them out. That lengthens the lever and that increases the resistance on the abdominals. So one of the first things I'd like to point out when we're lying down is bringing the feet close to the body. The reason we do that is we don't want the iliopsoas to be stretched. If we have our feet too far out, then the iliopsoas will be stretched and it's going to want to engage. We don't want it to engage. We want to isolate the abdominals. So we're not doing a full sit-up. We are just doing the crunch portion. So my head is neutral. I'm going to get a fixed point on the ceiling that I will watch. I'm going to first engage the transverse abdominis, pull the stomach in, hold it tight, cross my arms, and basically I'm just trying to lift my upper back off of the mats, shorten up the abdominals, breathe out as I'm going up, and relax. Same idea, nice and slow up, slight pause, and relax. So we have a pre-engagement, a tight core to begin with prior to even doing the exercise. We want it to be under constant tension. Even when we're lying down, this is being engaged for that transverse abdominis, pulling the abdominal wall in, shorten them, breathe out on the way up, breathe in on the way down, and relax. And one of the main reasons I chose the basic abdominal crunch is that we want to strengthen the core, and we want to start from the beginning. A strong core is very important for my client in her occupation, as she needs to keep her spine stable when she's leaning over top of the table and doing her work. You want to be able to engage that because we don't want the lumbar area to be compromised while she's doing that. We want to be able to keep it upright, and so get a good staggered stance, get down nice and low, engage the core as she's doing her work, or the alternative to that is the shoulders drop, the head drops, and a lot of the tension is on the low back. So keeping a strong transverse abdominis and abdominal region, to be able to engage that, to have lots of muscle endurance in that area, is going to be very beneficial for her. Once the client has mastered the basic crunch, a couple of things that we could do to make it more difficult, a couple of progressions. I'll show you those right now. One progression is going from the cross arms to an extended arm. All right, so it's basic crunch as well, but with more resistance. Got a pre-engagement of the core, crunching motion, and relax. The second progression that we would probably do, we lift the legs up, get roughly a 90-degree angle to start. Hands will be behind the head, and we would lift the shoulders and the knees at the same time. Basic crunch with hip flexion as well. That increases the range of motion, that gets the hip flexors involved, and it's a good progression after the basic crunch. We're mainly just focusing on the abdominals. Two of the main mistakes I see commonly done with the abdominal crunch, the basic crunch, is the use of momentum and then wrenching and pulling on one's head. So if the hands are behind the head, a lot of times they're doing a lot of pulling, using momentum in an attempt to do a full sit-up when really all they're trying to do is a crunch. So they're excessive range of motion. So I'll demonstrate that. A couple of the mistakes that I commonly see. So one of them, as mentioned, they'll pull forward and then their elbows will come up and they'll go up in that manner and wrench their head forward when it doesn't really need to be forward. We're just flexing the thoracic and lumbar portions, and then we're not really trying to flex the cervical portion of the spine. So, just gently placing the hands behind the ear is all that's required, and they're pulling really hard. And another thing is using momentum and not engaging that transverse abdominis, bringing the stomach in. So, maybe the individual has a big gut and they're not actively drawing it in, and then they're just racking through trying to get to a certain repetition. Maybe they'll feel a burn in doing that and they think they get a good workout, but they could probably accomplish that with much slower and more deliberate movements. All right, so again, my client is a visual and kinesthetic learner, so I've already demonstrated it. Now we're going to give her a chance to try it. So go ahead and cross your arms like I showed you. Okay. Now you're going to be breathing out on the way up. Now let's pre-engage the core. So I've already asked for permission for palpation, so we're going to contract the abdominals and also the transverse abdominis on the side. So bring the belly in, belly button down, breathe out on the way up and contract. Right about there. Good. And relax. Okay, so focus your point, focus on the ceiling at one point. Go ahead and try that again. Contract ahead of time and lift. Perfect range of motion there. Okay, right here is where we're focusing. Breathe out. Excellent. There's 3. Good contraction. 4. Use the transverse. You should also feel a burn on the side. You're bringing that transverse abdominis in. 5. Very good. 6.
Get my breathing better.
Breathe out on the way up. You're remembering your breathing. Excellent. 7.
Where should my chin be?
Just keep it neutral, so it shouldn't really move. Good question, though. You're keeping it in a good spot. And one more. You should be all set. Breathe out. Good. Any pains or issues there?
No.
Are you feeling it like you're supposed to?
I think so.
Absolutely.
Definitely here.
All right. The client did an excellent job with the abdominal crunches, with minimal engagement for me required. There's a couple of pointers. So she's just about ready to move on. I'll give her a B. She needs to build up a little bit more endurance and strength before we start introducing more complex movements.